I think there are different ways, okay? And one is always be willing to experiment and explore and work on yourself. I've been working on myself really since '71, but really if I look back, it started at graduate school at USC. We started at that point doing a lot of new work at that time in investigating ourselves, because I was in a very new project by the Health, Education, and Welfare Department in the United States. We went into Watts in 1966, right after the riots in '65, and our professors brought in some of the great psychologists of the time, therapists of the time, and we did a lot of work on ourselves. So it really started for me back in '66. And be willing to experiment, explore, and use yourself as the guinea pig. Sometimes I use you as guinea pigs too, okay? And I think that's been helpful, is that I'm always willing to look at finding better ways, because the Zen tradition is very old. It's 2,500 years old, and we can easily, what I would call, sit in the shadows of the ancient masters and think that we can't dare try to move beyond them. But Zen has always been, the thing of Zen has always been that each generation and each successor must surpass the previous generation and the previous teacher, their own teacher. However, we don't always have the courage to try to do that, nor the faith to do that. So one of the important things is always being willing to stand on the shoulders, not in the shadows and not on their heads, of our predecessors, you know, because it's so easy to stand on their heads and make them wrong or whatever, or stand in their shadow and say, well, there is no way that I can be as great as these great masters or the Buddha or these great teachers. So one of the things is to always be willing to move forward and to experiment and explore, and that's been motivating me for 37 years. So one of the things you can do is notice, just be aware, just notice when and what is happening to you, where you're coming from. Let's say you get into, I don't mean every moment, you know, most of the day you're drinking a cup of coffee, you don't have to notice I'm drinking a cup of coffee and I'm feeling this or that, but you get into some situation, let's say at work or in your relationship, or you're spending some time alone and something's coming up and you notice, you know, I'm feeling some jealousy here. Then just notice that and label it. Okay, let me speak to that voice. All right, well, why are you jealous? After you say, I'm experiencing that. Well, it's triggering this or this in me, and I don't like this, and I feel a loss of control. I feel like something's happening, and I don't like it. I feel like this situation is out of control. It's bringing up old feelings or whatever. You know, or you're feeling anger. Okay, well, let me speak to that voice. All right, I'm speaking as the voice of anger. Well, why are you angry? Well, I'm angry because this person did this and they let me down, or I feel rejected, and I feel angry about that. Just one rejection after another, it hurts me. So you're being conscious, you're being mindful, you're being attentive, you're being aware of what's going on. So what I suggest is that you notice. You start to notice. You start to see, observe your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. So you're not kind of just in your emotion without awareness, without consciousness. You're not just angry without some consciousness. You're not just jealous without consciousness. You want to bring consciousness or awareness, recognition to it. So that's one way to work in your daily life with it all. Another is to have a daily practice, which I basically mean a meditative practice, where you spend some time every day, and could start off like we suggested yesterday, 1 minute, and could work up to 30 minutes or twice a day, 30 minutes or whatever. I mean, you know, I went through a period where we sat 10 hours a day for 90 days. I mean, that's a lot of meditation. And we spend all our meals on what we call the cushion, the pillow. We spent a lot of time in chanting and services. We spend a lot of time facing ourselves. I think it's really important that we don't continue to run or hide from ourselves, because we can never get away from ourselves. We can distract ourselves. We can go from relationship to relationship. We can continue to try to find others that are going to make us feel better about ourselves. But what we always bring to every situation is oneself. And so it's important that we begin, even if it's a minute a day, whether we begin sitting upright or lying down, where there's no distraction, we're actually facing ourselves. We're actually being with ourselves and facing that which we're running away from. So that's important, having a daily meditation practice. Ideally sitting up, but you could start by lying down. Another thing that we can do is take some time every day to just ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? What frightens me? What is it I don't want to really explore or look at? And sometimes very tough things come up. Like, I don't want to look at maybe the loss of my children or my wife, you know, or other loved ones, right? And I don't want to look at that. I don't want to contemplate that. I don't want to look at my own death. That scares me. So then we begin to look at and maybe ask to speak to that voice of fear. Okay, let me speak to fear. Okay, I'm fear. Well, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid to lose my mind. I'm afraid I'm losing my physical well-being. I'm losing my physique. I'm losing my hair, whatever it is. I'm losing my teeth. So we look at our fears. Now, underlining so much is fear. And fear comes because of what we call the delusion or the ignorance of separation. In other words, instead of seeing that we're all one, like one ocean, we identify more with the individual waves of the ocean. And by identifying with these individual waves, we see ourselves as separate. Out of that understanding that I'm separate, that we take for granted as reality, which it isn't, it's the apparent reality, it's not the reality. Out of that feeling of separation, then up comes fear immediately. Because if there's separation, then you can hurt me, you can destroy me. So what is always underneath, as long as we're in a state of dualism, where we're seeing dualistically that you and I are not one, that we're not the same, you are you and I am me, there's always going to be fear underlying. And we're run by fear. We're run by this anxiety of separation. Also, what comes up because of that separation and underlies pretty much our daily life, but we even less like to look at it than fear, is jealousy or envy and jealousy, because it kind of goes in that order. You know, something good happens to you, I'm envious. Or if you're not doing what I think you should be doing and I love you and I'm attached to you, jealousy comes up. Or I'm jealous about your good fortune, or I'm jealous about your position, or I'm jealous about the money you make or the job you hold. And that's even more petty, and so we don't want to look at that. We really don't want to look at it.